Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X2022 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3732BN. Today's date is September 16th, 2025, and the title of the episode is Deep State Trapped in War Narrative, Domestic Terror Units into the Economic Collapse, Political and Geopolitical News. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech, fake news, the puppet masters. You can see Trump now is leading them down the path. He knows what is coming. I think we all do. I think we realize that the deep state players, number one, they're trying to push us into war. And when you look at what Trump is doing with the peace negotiations, you can see that he is trapping the EU, trapping the deep state players in all of this. This is why he put out the post on Truth, letting them know that they should sanction Russia, stop buying their oil. And what he did was he focused everything on them, because if they truly want to end the war and they truly want to have peace and they want Russia to fold, they would do exactly what Trump is saying, because Trump is letting them know, listen, we're doing it, but without your help, we can't accomplish this. So you need to take the next step. You need to do this. And if you decide not to, well, you really don't want peace. But if you do it, then we could see we can have peace and the war will end. What do you think the deep state players are going to do? Well, I do believe they'll probably delay it, and they'll probably try to create some type of an event so they can get out of it, which means they want to keep going for war, which means this is what the people of this world are going to see. Actually, Trump is now trapping them in the war narrative, and he's showing the people of this world that these people do not want peace. They want war every step of the way. And yes, it's going to be proven that it was a false flag. Yes, it's going to be proven that that Ukraine actually probably did the event, like always. Because once again, I do believe Trump and the Patriots, what they've done already is they made peace with Putin. They already have a deal. And Trump actually came out and said, listen, Zelensky, he's going to have to agree to this peace deal. He's just going to have to agree to it. So I think it's already done. They're basically trying to shut down the deep state and the EU from pushing us into war. And I do believe this is what Trump is doing right now. Plus, you could see the deep state players, this is exactly what they want. They want war. The central bankers, they want war. They want to bring us into the Great Reset. And they want a war within this country. And we know that there are a lot of domestic terror units, and I'm talking about Antifa and other organizations that are like Antifa, that have been teaching these individuals on how to hate America. They belong to a cult. And for a very long time, Antifa and many of these organizations, they've been mapped. And now we get confirmation that, yes, these organizations have been mapped. They are tracking them, and they know exactly who they are. So they're locking on these targets right now. And you can see that Trump, he is pre-positioning the National Guard in different cities. Now, let's take, for example, Tennessee, because Trump is bringing in the forces, the FBI, the National Guard, you name it, into Memphis. Now, we have a Republican as a governor. We have a Democrat as a mayor. And Trump now is going to be using this as a template because the governor is cooperating with Trump. The governor has the authority over the National Guard, which means it doesn't violate the Posse Comitatus Act. And you can see that Trump is using this as a template and saying, this is what we can do. Because you have to remember, the city of Memphis, there's a lot of crime there. Of course, it's run by a Democrat, and just like all the other blue cities. But he has problems in some of the other blue cities because they're also blue governors. And the blue governors don't want to work with Trump. And that means Trump would have to bring in the National Guard, and he would violate the Posse Comitatus Act unless he moves forward with the Insurrection Act. But he wants every single governor to work with him because it's a lot easier. Because if the governor is controlling the National Guard, there's no violation whatsoever. And the National Guard can be brought into the cities. They can protect the law enforcement agents. They can protect the federal buildings. Now, Trump, he doesn't need the governor for that, but they can also assist in arresting if need be. And if the governor is controlling the National Guard, there's no violation whatsoever. And this is exactly what the National Guard is doing in Memphis right now. They're pretty much doing the same thing that they did in D.C. They're going to be protecting ICE. They're going to be protecting the law enforcement there. They're going to be working with law enforcement. They're actually not going to be doing arrests. They're going to be protecting the federal buildings. They'll be cleaning up garbage. They'll be patrolling or standing around the street to deter people from committing crimes. And this is what Trump wants to do in other cities, but he knows that these governors, they're not going to cooperate. So eventually what's going to happen, I do believe he'll probably pre-position as many of the National Guard as he possibly can in a lot of these different cities, even though the governor doesn't want this to happen. And he will not violate the Posse Comitatus Act because he already got the ruling in LA and he's allowed to have the National Guard protecting the federal buildings and protecting ICE. But this is what he wants to do. And he's showing the entire country, look, if we do this, we can actually knock out crime in all these different cities and we can take the cities and make it a great place to live. Now, do you think the blue states would want this? And I'm not talking about the governor. I'm talking about the people of the blue states, the people that are living in the blue cities. Do you think they would want this? Absolutely, they would. And Trump is going to show them every step of the way. It works. Look, we did a great job. Memphis is cleaned up. There's hardly any crime. People are loving it. They're going out to dinner. Business is much, much better. Same thing that happened in D.C. And I do believe he's going to show the world, look, this is how easy it is. And the governors, this entire time, this is all they had to do. And those governors that cooperate with him, well, they're going to be reelected. Those governors, those mayors that fight against him, they are not. And you could see what is happening right now. Trump is preparing the country for what is coming. Yes, he has to get rid of all the criminals that they released. Yes, he has to get rid of and deport the illegals, all the criminal illegals that are on the streets. He needs to make sure that he cleans up the cities because he knows what's coming. He knows Antifa is on its way. And they are the agent provocateurs, and they are going to kick off the riots. And he knows if he can get ahead of all this, he can minimize this quite a bit. And this is exactly what he's doing right now. We're going to be talking a lot more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about Stephen King, because Stephen King was out there just on Sunday letting everyone know, wearing that 47 badge, saying this is your last opportunity. It's not too late, but go see my movie. Well, first of all, his movie bombed like all the other movies, and he can barely walk. And you could see that the people of this country, they're not on his side anymore. But I do believe that message was for something completely different. But when you look at his movie opened up to just 11.5 million domestically across nearly 3,000 theaters. He had a production budget of 20 million. This is a complete and utter disaster. And it's like all his other movies have bombed too. And the people, I think they're getting it. I think they understand. And you know something? I think the people also understand what Gavin Newsom what he's doing out in California. And it's no longer a conspiracy. And actually, Trump confirms this. He put this out on Truth. He said, shockingly, I have just learned that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is in final stages of approval to build low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades. How unfair is that to the people that have suffered so much? Newsom allowed their houses to burn by not accepting hundreds of millions of gallons of water from the Pacific Northwest. And now the low-income housing starts rising long before he gets permits for California citizens to rebuild. But long after the federal permits were issued, Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator, and I, as president, have done the job and produced all permits long before anybody expected that to happen. Unfortunately, the governor of California and Mayor Karen Bass failed you. Gavin Newsom's plan to build low-income housing at the super luxury Pacific Palisades fire site is what caused the destruction of the late, great New York City Mayor John Lindsay political career. And John Lindsay's was a Republican. So think about what Newsom's doing. I do believe he's getting all of this prepared and ready for the Green New scam, the Great Reset. And yes, he's building the low-income houses for all the illegals that they want to bring in. But think about what Trump is doing right now. He's now just set them all up. And the people now who live there, They're angry. They're pissed off. And do you think these people are going to get reelected? No, as Trump continually removes their cheating mechanisms, this is going to be very, very difficult to get reelected once again. And I think Trump is putting the pressure on these individuals, and he's calling them out every step of the way. And you could see all these individuals that have been rooting for the death of Charlie Kirk. The people on social media, they are calling them out every step of the way. And actually, what's very interesting is you can see a lot of these liberals, they've been teaching their children to root for someone being assassinated. Shu put this out and said, the individual recording this is the spouse of Lieutenant Colonel Adam Cole, who was assigned to Fort Carson. And it's a video of the two young children. And she was saying, oh, I have some good news. And the little kids were cheering like, hey, oh, Trump just died? Vance or Musk just died? I mean, eventually she said, no, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, they're getting married. But again, think about what these children are saying. I mean, this is what they've been teaching them. And as they get older and they keep teaching them this is why we have a generation of these individuals that completely hate America, that want to see people die, that will go out onto the streets and hurt people. Cynical Publius put this out and said, if you have not watched this video yet, you need to. I warn you, it may be one of the most disturbing things I've seen lately. Obviously, the fact that these are the wife and children of a serving, fairly senior active duty Army officer is troubling. Also, the fact that the mother thought it was okay to post on social media is deeply troubling in what it says about the current culture of our armed forces. But the most troubling thing is the cavalier and enthusiastic way these young children talk about the possible deaths of POTUS, POTUS, Elon. These are children indoctrinated into hate by a household of hate mongers. People wonder how it was possible for child-based extremist groups like the Hitler Youth and Mao's Red Guard to exist. This is why. It starts with evil parents, and that's absolutely true. And you can see it also starts with radical leftist teachers. And out in Texas, we see that over 100 radical leftist teachers in Texas, they're going to have their certificates suspended and face permanent ban from public schools after celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. And what's very interesting about this, and people say, oh, this isn't fair. Remember, every single organization has rules. And Abbott confirmed that these educators will not have their teaching certifications suspended, but will be permanently barred from working in Texas public schools. In a strongly worded letter to superintendents, TEA Commissioner Mike Morath condemned the educators' despicable behavior, noting that such conduct may constitute violations of the educators' code of ethics. He confirmed that all documented cases have been referred to the TEA's Educator Investigations Division. And remember, all these organizations, they have certain rules. And if these people violate the rules, they're going to be let go. They opted to do this once again. And again, do you really want one of these teachers teaching your child where they're rooting for the death of an American citizen that did absolutely nothing wrong? They just didn't like his words. They didn't like that he was debating others. And actually, he was using facts and destroying those individuals that came up to the microphone. I mean, really think about this. This is absolutely unbelievable. We even have those people in Congress doing this. Representative Nancy Mace announced that the House resolution will be filed to strip radical Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar of all her committee assignments. This is due to Omar's vile, unhinged celebration of the assassination of conservative icon Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point USA founder. So once again, we have another individual pushing this out there. And pretty much this is what she said. Kirk was a reprehensible human being, a stochastic terrorist. With his last dying words, he was spewing racist dog whistles. Charlie Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein, and his monster shot him through the neck. Think about this for a second. Think about what she's saying. Did he ever hurt anyone? Was he ever violent? No, he was just using words. So did he deserve to die? Absolutely not. and these people should be removed from their positions. And look, on Steamer, we have crazy left-wing individuals, one of them being Destiny. And this individual is pushing the idea that people should be murdered. People should die. Eric Doherty put this out and said, Elon Musk calls for the top left-wing Steamer Destiny to go to prison for incitement to murder and domestic terrorism on felony charges. He can resume streaming when he has served his term. Let him say what he wants, but then also pay the price under the law. DC Drainer responding to this says, if Osama bin Laden said, you need Americans to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events, right now they don't feel like there's any fear. We would take that as a serious threat. So why does Destiny get to freely incite the same violence against fellow Americans? The question is why. And I think all these individuals, they're going to be paying the price in the end. Because once again, you think the people, the majority of the people of this country are going to be going along with this? Absolutely not. And what's very interesting, and Top Tour Golf put this out and is keeping track of all those people that have been fired from their jobs. Remember, they're opting to do this. They're the ones who are going onto social media. They're the ones who are breaking their rules in their government job or their private job. They're the ones who are deciding to do this. And remember, if you decide to do this, there are going to be consequences. But they put up this official tracker and it says 1,283 people have been fired or lost their jobs celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. And you can see every step of the way, it's going to get worse and worse for them. And what's very interesting is we see that Discord, and this is like a gaming platform where people speak and stuff like that. They claimed that Charlie Kirk's assassin never discussed the killing on its platform. They said, no, we have no idea what you're talking about. I don't see that. Well, it looks like they were lying. Andy No says, don't forget how Discord lied. The first article says, Discord says platform not used in subject's murder plan. From the Washington Post, it was me, suspect in Charlie Kirk shooting, appeared to confess in a Discord chat. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Sean Davis says, Discord is a key communications platform for left-wing terrorists to groom, recruit, train, and deploy its army of discussing gender goblins, which is exactly why its leadership lied about its role in Charlie's assassination. Absolutely. And remember that old individual, George Zinn, that was out there? And they were, arresting him, putting him in handcuffs. And he was saying, I have the right to remain silent. And when he was walking away and they had him in cuffs, he was screaming out, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me. Well, very interesting. This coming from the New York Post. This individual, he was told to draw attention from the real shooter. Now, that's very interesting. So that conspiracy that we're all talking about is now true. And who actually told him to do this? Sean Davis responds to this and says, charge him as a terrorist accomplice and an accessory to first-degree murder. He should receive the exact same treatment as John Wilkes Booth's accomplices. It's obvious now that Charlie Kirk's assassin was not working alone. He was clearly operating with a larger terrorist network focused on grooming, recruiting, and training terrorists for the purpose of planning and executing terrorist attacks. Now, the question is, who are these other groups? But the other thing that's very interesting about this individual, George Zinn, and Andy No put this out, is that this individual was caught having child sex abuse material. And remember, this individual was at 9/11 and at other events. So is this individual a crisis actor? Is this individual controlled by the deep state players? I mean, if he's looking at basically child sex abuse material, they have something over on him and they might say, listen, this is your money, or maybe they don't pay him. Maybe it's just blackmail. But again, you can see it's part of a bigger network, which is very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that there were other accounts that were also talking about Trump's assassination. And I'm not talking about the past assassination attempts. I'm talking about future assassination attempts. And Mushy put out Donald Trump, December 14th. So, and this was put out on September 3rd, 2025. So this is very, very interesting. Now, this X account has been deleted. And they knew what was happening with Charlie Kirk. And they also said, we're going to take care of Trump on the 14th. So are they planning something? Is this part of a bigger operation? Because remember, I don't believe it's just this little trans community. I do believe the trans community, which is Trans Tifa and all the other organizations, this is a hierarchy, and it goes up to those individuals that are unelected that are controlling all of this. And it probably goes all the way to the Source organization. But we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But first, let's talk about Pam Bondi, because everyone's getting a little crazy about what she said about hate speech. And once again, she was talking about hate speech in regards to hate speech becoming violent, where actually you carry out a violent act. This is what she put out on X, and this is what she said. Hate speech that crosses a line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. For far too long, we've watched the radical left normalize threats, calls for assassinations, and cheer on political violence. That era is over. Under 18 U.S.C. 875C, it is a federal crime to transmit any communication containing any threat to kidnap any person or any threat to injure the person of another. Likewise, 18 U.S.C. Section 876 and 18 U.S.C. Section 115 make it a felony to threaten public officials, members of Congress, or their families. You cannot call for someone's murder. You cannot swat a member of Congress. You cannot dox a conservative family and think it will be brushed off as free speech. These acts are punishable crimes, and every single threat will be met with the full force of the law. Free speech protects ideas, debate, even dissent, but it does not and will never protect violence. It is clear this violent rhetoric is designed to silence others from voicing conservative ideals. We will never be silenced. Not for our families, not for our freedoms, and never for Charlie. His legacy will not be erased by fear or intimidation. And she's absolutely right. Now, of course, she came out and said, she's going to be going after hate speech, and everyone went a little bit crazy. I think she should have explained a little bit further about what she was talking about, and she explained it in this X post where she's saying, no, hate speech that moves into actually committing violent crimes or asking others to commit violent crimes. And again, we know under the law, this goes way beyond free speech. This is why our founding fathers said, yes, you have a right to petition the government peacefully. And that means you can protest without violence. Once it becomes violent and once you start destroying things, it is now a crime. And you can see everything that these deep state players have done. They have unleashed a whirlwind of people becoming awake. And the movement is growing by leaps and bounds. Now, I do believe their plan was to get the American people to go after Antifa. Now, this still might be their plan because I do believe they're preparing riots. And I do believe most likely we'll probably see other events to try to get the Republican base, the conservative base, and even those Ds that are now becoming Republican or now looking or siding with Trump and common sense. I do believe they want the American people to get to the streets because once they start the riots, I think this is what they're pushing for. But I don't think they understand the American people. I don't think they understand that we don't burn our own cities. We don't hurt our own people. We don't loot buildings. This is them. This is what they do. We actually have peaceful vigils. We come together. We stand strong and we use our words unless we are attacked. If we are attacked, yes, every single person will defend themselves. But you know what they want to happen. They want people to get to the streets and they want a civil war. But it's the opposite is happening right now. Basically, young voters, they're abandoning the left. They're losing their base. Now think about this. Now you understand why they need the illegals in this country. Because they really don't have the people of this country. And now they're using the young generation. Two numbers in particular define the ruinous state of the progressive movement among the young, 44 and 32,000. Prior to the assassination, the left had already hemorrhaged support among Gen Z voters. Trump increased his vote from those under 30 years old by a whopping 44% in the 2024 presidential election, heavily affecting the outcome. This was due in large part to the unceasing efforts of Kirk to educate and detoxify high school and college students constantly bombarded with anti-conservative, anti-American rhetoric from the academy. big media, and Trump deranged progressives. Among the numbers that jump out in exit polling was Trump increasing his vote share among young men from 41% in 2020 to 56% in 2024. His overall support among young voters rocketed up to 24% in Michigan and by an average of 17% in 5 of the other 6 battleground states. The question following the election was whether this spike in Gen Z support for Trump was a one-off thing, driven mostly by the failures of the Biden, or a sustainable tectonic shift in the electorate. Of course, the answer had yet to be determined, but that is where the second number comes in. Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, reports that since that fateful day in Utah, it has received an almost inconceivable 32,000 inquiries about starting new chapters of the organization. That number is even more off the charts when placed in full perspective. TPUSA currently has 900 college chapters, 1,200 high school affiliates, and a total of 3,500 branches in the United States. So basically, this number is completely growing by leaps and bounds, which means everything the deep state players have tried to do, it has completely and utterly failed, which means they're going to push even harder to get the American people to take to the streets because they want people to interact and fight Antifa, the illegals, the criminals on the streets. Now, think about what Trump is doing. He is now trying to minimize all of this. Remember, Antifa can only function if they have the criminals, illegals, and the people that they need on the streets. If they don't have that, they are just a small group. And they're not going to have the devastation, the looting, the fires that they want. And this is going to be a major, major problem. Now, the individual that assassinated Trump, Tyler Robinson, it looks like they're trying to get the death penalty for this individual, which they should because they assassinated someone. And he has a total of something like 7 counts against him. Count 1, aggravated murder. Count 2, felony reckless discharge of a firearm causing bodily injury. Count 3, felony obstruction of justice for hiding the firearm. Count 4, felony obstruction of justice for discarding the clothing he wore during the shooting. Count 5, witness tampering for asking roommate to delete incriminating messages. Witness temperating for demanding trans roommates stay silent and not speak to police. Count 7, commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. And this person that assassinated Charlie Kirk in front of the world, because think about it, the world now has seen it. Now, this episode of the X22 Report is brought to you by Rumble Premium, the home of free speech and exclusive content from voices that matter. With Rumble Premium, you get ad-free viewing, access to exclusive shows, and premium features across the platform. We're talking about Steven Crowder's Mug Club, Tim Pool's Timcast, Russell Brand's Raw Commentary, and Redacted News, plus tons of other bold creators you won't find anywhere else. And actually, if you want to see the new Mr. and Mrs. X show, it is only on Rumble Premium. Whether it's breaking news, real talk, or the content that challenges the narrative, Rumble Premium puts you in the front row. Support creators who actually say what they mean and mean what they say. Go to rumble.com/premium/X22 to join today. That's rumble.com/premium/X22 because the truth shouldn't come with a filter. Or just click the link in the description. Should be made an example of. And again, yes, this person should get due process. They should have their day in court. But in the end, when they're found guilty, they should be made an example of. So everyone can see this. The entire trans movement, the deep state players, everyone can see it. If you try to do something like this, this is what's going to happen to you. So you'll see it. You can make this decision. And we'll see how many people want to go through with it. Because again, if you throw the individual in jail, people are going to say, okay, I'll take jail time. I'll get out and, whenever. For good behavior, maybe it'll take me 20 years, 25 years, but eventually I'll get out. But if you actually seek the death penalty, this is a whole different ballgame. And what's very interesting is that we know that Trump and team, they are looking at other organizations that are involved in this. And we know that this individual is not the only individual that was involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But you have to remember, when everyone is talking about, hey, we need to get along, we have to coexist, you have to remember these individuals are a cult. And there are many different levels of deprogramming a cult member. And I don't know if people remember, if you go back to the 70s, when there were rescue operations where the parents went in with others to rescue their child from a cult. And there are something like 7 different signs and 7 different stages that cult members have when you're trying to speak to them, when you're trying to deprogram them. And here is the first one. And I think this is the stage we're at with the cult members. So here is the first one. And I think this is where we're at right now. Initial hostility and defensiveness. The person may start with strong resistance, arguing vehemently in defense of their beliefs, citing cult doctrines or leaders, and rejecting contradictory information. This can manifest as verbal pushback, dismissal of evidence, or accusations against the people that they're talking to. And then here's the other part: emotional distress. Common reactions include anger, fear, anxiety, frustration, or crying as they confront challenging information that disrupts their indoctrinated worldview. They even become angry where they use violence. And I do believe that is where we are right now. Because if you notice, when these individuals come up to debate Charlie Kirk, and you see it in his videos, and Charlie is using facts, and these people then, what happens? They stop debating. They start calling him names. Some people even throw bottles of water, and they eventually walk away and they scream. Well, we have these cult members now that are out there that are angry. They're pissed off, and they are now acting out in public. And yes, these people need to be deprogrammed, and it takes a long time. It just doesn't happen overnight. You just can't say, hey, by the way, you're now deprogrammed. These people need treatment. They're sick. And who has created this sickness? This has come from the D's. It's come from the fake news. Think about all their rhetoric with fascism. Trump is Hitler. We're domestic extremists. We're domestic terrorists. We're a threat to this democracy. We're a threat to everything that they hold dear. This is what they have ingrained in them over and over and over. So when they look at us, they see us as the enemy, an enemy that they have to destroy, or they believe that we're going to destroy them, which is not the case whatsoever. Actually, we want all these people to get some type of help, because they're sick and they've been tricked. Now, these individuals, they dress up in dims. 1 minute they're Antifa, next minute they're BLM people, then they're Antifa again. Then when there's something else that comes up, oh, it's Free Palestine time. Now let's change our costumes, and now we're Free Palestine. It's the same exact people. There's no difference whatsoever. They're just pushing the same exact agenda, just using different narratives. And what's very interesting, these individuals, they're also the ones, along with the D's and the fake news and everyone else, trying to dox ICE, trying to expose them. Rapid Response 47 put this out and said, this is coming from Steve Miller, by the way, there are these nonprofit entities that organize attacks on ICE officers, attacks on Border Patrol agents, organize doxing campaigns. Under POTUS direction, AG Pam Bondi is going to find out who is paying for it, and they will now be criminally liable for paying for violence. Absolutely. Remember, these individuals, they're not just doing it on their own. This is coming from certain organizations. The organizations then lead up to someone else, which leads up to somebody else. So now we're going to find out who is involved in all this. Lisa May responded and said, all roads lead to, from drop 299, Soros. Controls organizations of people, create division, brainwash, and management, operator of slush funds. Personal net worth never reduces. Think DOJ settlements, consumer, Iran, EnviroPax, etc., etc., etc. And yes, he's getting the funds from all the money laundering, and he's using the people's money to drive this in this country. And now we're going to have these investigations that are going to be directly looking at the different NGOs. Actually, Trump has created an executive order to look at the NGOs and track down where all this money is going, who's paying for this, and who's supporting all these different organizations that are out there. Trump now is exposing the entire Antifa network. Remember, they said this was a grassroots thing. There's no organization. There's nothing. But now we can see this is very, very different because, again, they thought they were able to hide everything. They thought no one would ever be able to figure this out. And this is what Doge was all about, actually exposing how they launder the money from these ridiculous programs to the NGOs, to Soros, and many others. Now we know how they do it. All you got to do is follow the money, and you will find out who's involved in every single one of these things. And we'll be talking a lot more about these groups a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what Kash Patel said. He was in front of Congress today, and boy, did he destroy Cory Booker. He destroyed Pencil Neck, which is Adam Schiff. I mean, he just went after them. I think it's a lot of anger that's been building for a very long time because you have to remember these people have been attacking him for a very long time. And now he is in the position to go after these people. And he's just letting loose, not with emotion, but with facts. And the people of this country are hearing this, and it's absolutely glorious. Unbelievable. These people now are being put in a position where they have to defend themselves because he's going to be releasing facts like we've never seen before. And you could see how panicked they really are. Now, Kash did mention the Epstein information, which I find very, very interesting. And Gunther Eagleman put this out. And this is what he says. What we have done, and just to remind folks, the Epstein case files existed in the two prior administrations, in the Obama administration and the Biden administration, and they didn't release anything. There was President Trump in the first administration that renewed charges against Mr. Epstein. And I know it's a little complicated to understand, but what exists in the Epstein case files was a direct result of the limited search warrants from 2006 and 2007, which hamstrung future investigations because of the non-prosecution agreement. Multiple administrations had the opportunity to look at the entirety of that case file and recommend prosecutions against anyone that was trafficked under Mr. Epstein and anyone that participated in that trafficking. And the only person to bring charges was the prior administration against Mr. Epstein. Now, I'm not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I'm telling you is that based on the information we have, and we have continuously and publicly asked for the public to come forward with more information, if there is, we'll look at it. But based on credible information, we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never released is information on investigations that are not credible. And we don't release the names of victims who weren't credible. But at the same time, we don't release the names of victims who were credible. And so the information, that's by law. And so the information we are releasing now is historic. And it is also the maximum capacity that the law allows. I know that's not going to satisfy many and many, many people. But if they wanted it done right, then the investigation from its origination should have been done right. And he should not have been given a get out of jail free card to do jail on the weekends for 12 hours a day. And he should have been investigated fully for the entirety of his crime and criminal enterprise, not just from 97 to 2001. And think about it. Why didn't the prior administration do anything? What did Biden do the entire time? Absolutely nothing. But we do know that Epstein's estate has now released more information on him, and the House Oversight Committee released new batches of docs, including material from Epstein estate and interview with Bill Barr, who clears Trump of any wrongdoing. So the information is getting out there, and we as people, we want the credible information. We don't want the doctored information. We've got that before with the Russia thing, with the phone call with Zelensky thing. We don't want the fake information. We want the credible information. But I do believe there's going to be information that's going to be credible, and I do believe it's going to be coming from the grand jury, and I do believe eventually that is going to come out and people are going to find out quite a bit. So this is going to be very, very interesting as we move forward. And there might even be other information. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, we could see out in the UK, we can see that they are now supporting the illegals, and they're not supporting the British people. Sounds very, very similar to here in the United States, where the deep state players, Biden, or Obama, they were supporting the illegals and not the people of this country. You could see this in France. You could see this in many other countries. And what's very interesting is that the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, says we must unite against those who seek to divide us. So remember, in the UK, they had a rally. Millions of people were there. Unite the Kingdom rally. It was on Saturday. And it has made London's diverse communities feel extremely worried, and that the leaders of the far right are trying to hijack the British flag. No, they're not trying to hijack anything. Basically, what they're saying is, listen, we're done with all these illegals in here, and we're going to take our country back. Are they going to do this violently? No, I don't think so. I think they're protesting out there saying enough is enough. Just like the people in this country, when they look at all the illegals, they say enough is enough. And you could see that Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, he's panicking over this. Remember, they've made deals with Soros to bring in all these illegals. Just like the mayor of Tokyo has made a deal with Soros. Just like there are many individuals within this country who's made a deal with Soros to bring in the illegals. And if you look, this has been their plan from the very, very beginning, to blend the country and actually have the country taken over with these Islamists. And you could see that now that the people are pushing back, they are now panicking. And panic they should. Because again, this is something that people do not want, and these people do not benefit the United States, and they don't benefit any other country. They actually destroy the country. Why would we want criminals here? Why would we want people that don't adhere to our Constitution? Why would we want people that can't benefit the country in any way whatsoever? We wouldn't. That's why we vet people. That's why we say, okay, let me take a look. You want to come into this country? Are you a criminal? Are you a rapist? Are you a drug dealer? We got to do a little background check on you. Oh, wait a minute. You are? We don't want you here. Why do we want another freaking criminal in this country? It's like your home. When someone comes to your door, you say, okay, let me see who you are. I don't know who you are. And you start to question them. You don't let them in and then find out, holy crap, it's a murderer. Why did I do this? It makes no sense whatsoever. And if you notice, all these liberals, when they're actually asked to bring illegal into their home or give them money, they always back out. Very, very interesting. But you can see the deep state players, they're now losing the narrative, and you can see that everything that they're trying to do, it's starting to fail. And again, when you look at Hamas, it is a terrorist organization, just like every other terrorist organization. It's very, very difficult to negotiate with the terrorist organization. That's why they're called terrorists. And it looks like Netanyahu is now thanking Trump for the hostage ultimatum as Gaza City attacks begin. And it looks like Hamas now is moving the hostages above ground, and they're going to use them as human shields. Wow, these are really good down-to-earth people, aren't they? No, they're terrorists. Trump, he put this out and said, I have just read a news report that Hamas has moved the hostages above ground to use them as human shields against Israel's ground offensive. I hope the leaders of Hamas know what they're getting into if they do such a thing. This is a human atrocity, the likes of which few people have ever seen before. Don't let this happen, or all bets are off. Release all hostages now. And again, he's letting them know that if you go forward with this, that's it. And I do believe that that time is coming, and it's approaching very, very quickly. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that Trump, he pretty much put the spotlight on the EU and the deep state players and NATO and said, listen, you want peace? You want peace with Russia? I'm going to tell you what to do. Forget war. Place sanctions. Stop buying oil from Russia, and we can have peace. So what did the EU do? The European Union has put its next round of sanctions against Russia on hold, with no new timeline for when the measures will move forward. And why would they do that? Because they're saying they're confused. We already have a lot of sanctions on Russia. Well, Trump is saying, don't buy their oil. Ban it. Someone's buying it. They're saying that they already banned most imports. Well, most imports is not banning all the oil. Why won't they do it? Why don't they want peace? Think about it. So now Trump, He set them all up, and now the world is watching. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, "We are prepared to increase pressure on Russia, but we need our partners in Europe to follow." We are talking about what the EU and the U.S., do together, but we need our European partners to follow us. So are they going to do it? Most likely not. Now, there's a lot of pressure on them. Hopefully they do it. And actually, instead of going to war, they put pressure on Russia, and Russia says, okay, let's have peace. I think this is what Trump is trying to do. And then he wants Zelensky to accept this. And this is what Trump said. As he was speaking to the reporters on his way to the UK, he said that Ukrainian President Zelensky is going to have to make a deal with Russia to end the long-running war. And that is absolutely true. He's going to have to make the deal one way or another. Let's see how this all plays out. But I do believe most likely the deep state, they're going to follow the 16-year plan. Then they'll probably use some type of an event or something to make it, or try to make it go the other way, because they don't want to sanction Russia. They don't want to stop buying the oil. They don't want to put the squeeze on Russia. So Russia will say, okay, let's negotiate. They don't want any of that. They actually want World War III. That's their entire mission. And I do believe this is why Christine Lagarde was saying prepared for the central bank digital currency. This is why Klaus Schwab is saying this is the perfect time for the Great Reset. Let's move on this right now. I do believe they're preparing for something. But again, Trump is showing this country and the world, look, these are the warmongers. They are the ones who want war. Now, there has been a bombshell in the auto pen. And what's very interesting, and Just the News put this out, is that the new internal memos from the Biden White House are the first glimpse into the Trump administration's probe into the former president's mental decline and the abundant use of his auto pen signature. Internal memos obtained by Just the News show Joe Biden's aides believed at the beginning of his administration that he had an obligation to personally sign off official presidential actions, including pardons, and chronicle how the former president later outsourced clemency decisions to then Vice President Kamala Harris. The memos were gathered as a part of a sweeping review by the Trump White House into Biden's use of auto pen signatures for official business, an inquiry that now raises new questions about whether the former president actually attended 4 meetings late in his term dedicated to making clemency decisions. Those clemency decisions included preemptive pardons for the Biden family members as well as commutations for federal death row sentences. No records of Biden attending meetings that resulted in clemency. The National Archives said, we can't find specific meeting notes that clearly mention or note that the president was present. So basically what it's showing is that others decided to do this. They were in charge. So this is very interesting. So does that mean everything is null and void? Does that mean he has no idea what he's doing? Think about it. When we all go back to the 2020 election and we show that they rigged the election, it's all going to start to make sense to the people of this country. That they rigged the election, they overthrew the United States government, they overthrew the duly elected president, they put in a puppet government. He wasn't really running the government. It was Obama and other lackeys. They were doing everything. They were signing everything, using the auto pen. And people are going to look at this and go, holy crap, this is why the country was being destroyed. This is why the country was in so much trouble. This is why we voted for Trump. And I do believe this is what people are going to find out. The question is, what do we do with the 4 lost years? I mean, yes, Trump was controlling everything. I do believe he controlled it via the military, but they did rob him of being in the White House. This will be very, very interesting as we move forward. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that Fani Willis, everything that she tried to do, it looks like it went down the tubes. Jeff Clark put this out and said, I'm pleased to announce that Fani Willis has now been permanently disqualified from prosecuting the indictment that she brought against Trump, me, and many others. The Georgia Supreme Court denied cert for Fani Willis, who attempting to get that court to take her case so that she could try to get an undisqualified after the Georgia Court of Appeals threw her off the case. The case now moves to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. They will decide on a replacement for Willis Praise the Lord for progress in this case. It never should have been brought in the first place. And once again, Fani Willis, she's part of the criminal syndicate. She is a criminal herself. And you could see that she was doing this and following the criminal syndicate to go after Trump, just like all the others. And now you could see it's all falling apart for them. And the other thing we could see is that Trump, he is now suing each fake news organization that is putting out fake stories about Trump and defaming him. And the latest is the New York Times. He said, today, I have the great honor of bringing a $15 billion defamation and libel lawsuit against the New York Times, one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of our country, becoming a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. I view it as the single largest illegal campaign contribution ever. Their endorsement of Kamala Harris was actually put dead center on the front page of the New York Times, something heretofore unheard of. The Times has engaged in a decade-long method of lying about your favorite president, me, my family, business, the American First Movement, MAGA, and our nation as a whole. I am proud to hold this once respected rag responsible, as we are doing with the fake news networks, such as our successful litigation against George Slopadopoulos, ABC Disney, and 60 Minutes CBS Paramount, who knew that they were falsely smearing me through a highly sophisticated system of document and visual alterations, which was in effect a malicious form of defamation and thus settled for record amounts. They practiced this long-term intent and pattern of abuse, which is both unacceptable and illegal. The New York Times has been allowed to freely lie, smear, and defame me for far too long, and that stops now. The suit is being brought in the great state of Florida. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. And yes, he should be going after every single one of these individuals. And think about it. Trump now, he is prepping the United States, actually creating a template. And now he has deployed the Guard to Memphis, calling it a replica of his crackdown on D.C. So basically, he has the FBI, DOJ, they're creating this task force. And yes, the National Guard is being brought into, but the governor is cooperating with Trump right now. And we know that the mayor of Memphis is a Democrat. And actually, he has no choice in this. But since Governor Lee is working with Trump, that means the governor is in control of the National Guard forces, and the Posse Comitatus Act is not violated whatsoever. So what is the National Guard's role? Well, it involves mobilizing troops to provide operational assistance and a visible presence in the besieged neighborhoods as a crime deterrent, supporting the overall task force objectives without primarily engaging in direct arrests, searches, or law enforcement direction. Same thing in L.A. They can, however, temporarily detain individuals to prevent imminent harm before transferring custody to law enforcement authorities. The deployment is coordinated with federal agencies such as the FBI, DEA, ICE, ATF, Homeland Security, Investigations, and U.S. Marshals, as well as state and local entities like the Memphis Police Department and Tennessee Highway Patrol. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has endorsed the move, while Memphis Mayor Paul Young noted it was not requested by the city but emphasized cooperation. And this mirrors the Guard's support in prior operations, such as in D.C., where they handled logistics, beautification tasks, and a proactive presence alongside federal agents. So the exact number of Guard troops for Memphis has not been specified, but let's see how this all plays out. But again, you have to remember that the governor, since the governor is controlling this, since the governor is in control of the National Guard and they're not federalized, this does not violate the Posse Comitatus Act. Now, if Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, yes, then National Guard, they be federalized, he would have control. But I do believe what he's doing is using this as a template, and he's pre-positioning the National Guard in the cities for when we need it. And I do believe as we get closer and closer to the midterms, we're going to need it. But he's going to show the country, look how easy it is. I just cleaned up another city. And he's going to look at the blue states, the blue cities, and say, should we do it in your city? You know, the people in those cities are going to say, absolutely yes. He might even use another red state with a blue city to say, look, I did it now twice. I did it 3 times, actually, D.C., but in sovereign states, I was able to do it. And I'll say to the blue state governors, do you want to do this? Of course, they're going to reject because, again, they don't want their illegal deported because they know there's an election coming up. The people are going to demand it. And every time he does this, it's going to get worse and worse for them. And every time he does it, he's pre-positioning the National Guard in all of these places. He knows exactly where they're going to push the riots. Why do you think he has the troops in L.A.? Why do you think he got the ruling? They can't question it now, especially when you have the governors of the states go along with it. Even if you don't have the governor going along with it, Trump can still bring in the National Guard and have them protect ICE, have them beautify the city, have them protect the federal buildings. That is not in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. I think he's prepping everything so when they start to riot, he can then say, it's an insurrection. And all of a sudden, you have the guards ready to go. Clean and swift. Very easy. Now, the other thing that we could see is that we know that Kash Patel, he was being grilled by the Senate. And Chuck Grassley announced something very, very interesting. And this is in regards to Charlie Kirk. Gunther Eagleman put this out and said, Senator Chuck Grassley just announced that a FBI whistleblower revealed to him an FBI project called Arctic Frost that targeted groups like Charlie Kirk's TPUSA. This is a bombshell. He says that they are releasing those documents today. In total, 92 Republicans targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see, Grassley says. I hope a lot of people are interested in seeing what government can do when various agencies have a political agenda. And again, if they're investigating and they're putting out information to the trans community, can they have the trans community Antifa go after Charlie Kirk and many others? Yes, they can. And FBI Director Kash Patel confirms there are a lot more than 20 people in Tyler Robinson's Discord chat and are all under FBI investigation. He also says we are now looking at other organizations. Green Lives Matter put this out and said, today, Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance both proclaimed that they will dismantle the terrorist networks that organize riots and street violence. We all know where that money leads to. George Soros and his son, Alex Soros. If now is not the time to stop the puppet masters and dismantle their violent foot soldiers, then when is? We know that they have hinted at a RICO charge for Soros in recent weeks, and we also know that George Soros was responsible for funding a color revolution in Ukraine that led to the events that are happening today. If you want permanent change, you have to follow the money and stop it at its source. This must be done. Arrest Soros. Listen to Stephen Miller. Righteous anger directed for a just cause is one of the most important of change in human history. We're going to channel all the anger that we have to uproot and dismantle all these terrorist networks, the organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. With God as my witness, we are going to use every resource that we have to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name. Absolutely. And we could see that the deep state players, they have these different organizations that they've been funneling money into. Tony Saruga put this out and said, George Soros Open Society indirectly funded SLC Armed Queers by funding grants funneled to SLC Armed Queers leaders. George Soros Open Society also funds thousands of LGBTQ plus initiatives globally, supposedly anti-discrimination efforts. The Ford Foundation supports numerous social justice and LGBTQ plus causes via grants exceeding $100 million annually for equity programs. Where do you think that money's coming from? It's laundered by we the people to the NGOs. And while no grants, partnership, or mentions of SLC Armed Queers appear in Ford's public reports or database, as with OSF, any association are absent from the available records on purpose. The foundation was aware of the group's violent rhetoric and ties to Cuba. Additionally, there are links to the United Nations and the UGD State Department. For clarification, the Utah Global Diplomacy, formerly known as the International Visitors Utah Council or Utah Council for Citizen Diplomacy, does not have its own State Department, but has a long-standing partnership and collaboration with the U.S. Department of State. So this is very, very interesting. And Data Republican decided to do a deep dive into all this and says, first, credit to SK Double Dub 33 for a crucial tip. Armed Queers SLC is under investigation for possible foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Their leader, Ermiah Fanian, was recognized by a State Department-affiliated NGO, Utah Global Diplomacy, as a recipient of the 7 for 17 award for advancing the UN's 17 goals. Utah Global Diplomacy has since scrubbed her presence from their website, unknown when this purge happened. That's interesting. This is what pops up when you search for her name in connection to Utah Global Diplomacy. All scrubbed. So 404 error. And yes, she was an organizer with Armed Queers SLC. Per the 990s form with the Utah Global Diplomacy, EIN 876-128-308, the nonprofit is a partner with the U.S. State Department to cultivate emerging leaders and diplomacy initiatives. In other words, she was selected to help shape U.S. foreign relations. Their words, not mine. She was selected as Utah Global Diplomacy first 17 for 17 award winner, honoring her network to advancing UN 17 sustainable goals. I'm pulling together the exact nature of the work she did for the UN. Utah Global Diplomacy reports receiving most of its income in government grants. So basically, she's been receiving money from the government, from NGOs, and many other areas. So this is very, very interesting. And we could see this group should be under investigation, which they are. They are connected in a certain way. And eventually, we're going to see that Antifa, this group, and many others, they're all terror networks that were developed in this country to change this nation. Actually, remember when Obama said he would like to transform this nation? That is what he's talking about. Under his administration, all of this was born to transform this country. And now you're starting to see it. And what Trump is doing right now, he is getting ready and prepared to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, and probably many others. Storm Has Arrived put this out and said, President Trump says he might designate Antifa and other groups as domestic terrorists, and says he has been talking to AG Pam Bondi about RICO charges for some of the people that you've been reading about, Soros. I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that we've been reading about that have been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes. And Pam Bondi is going to be looking into this. She'll be bringing RICO cases against them. It's a criminal RICO because they should be put in jail. And this is what Trump said. So it looks like it has now begun. He's pre-positioning the National Guard in all these cities, one city at a time, removing the illegals, removing the criminals, getting ready for what the deep state players are planning. Now they're investigating all these individuals that have been funding these organizations. Remember, they've been telling us, oh, this is a grassroots movement. It never was. This was all driven by Soros and many, many others. And now it's all going to be coming to an end. And if you look at this, you can see Trump now is locked on target, and he's preparing for what the deep state is about to do. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow, but I do believe as we get closer and closer to the elections, they'll probably try to start something like they did the last time. Remember when the BLM riots happened in 2020, the summer of 2020? I do believe they're going to try to do something probably around that time frame, right before the elections, or maybe leading up to the elections, because once again, they know that once they lose the elections, they lose the House, they lose the Senate, we get rid of the rhinos, the game is over. They're screwed. If they can't have riots, that if they can't bring us to World War III, they're done for, which means I do believe they're going to try everything they possibly can to try to make this happen. And you can see every step of the way, Trump is countering all this, and the people are behind him. That's very, very important, because without the people behind him, without the people approving this, this would be a complete and utter disaster. This is why he didn't do it his first term. He didn't have the percentage of people behind him that he has now. And it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. By the time he goes to arrest these people, he was going to have the majority of the country. And the deep state will not be able to do anything. We will be in full control. And that's right. The Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.